maybe a little bit surprising. You're starting to see them more in the shorter search terms.
But if you look at finance and healthcare, it's incredibly prevalent.
When AI basically summarizes a lot of content in finance, the result sometimes is very, very complex in terms of compliance and regulation.
It could be 30, 40% of the time, 3-word search term, you get an AI overview. I think their ultimate goal, right, is does this make the user happy?
It's a bit more overlooked, right? People, there are less solutions for ads, but again, they're very powerful tools for these bad actors to just be in front of users. On organic, it's about poisoning the sources of the LLMs, right?
Hello and welcome to a special in-person episode of the Paid Search NYC podcast. I'm very excited to be joined by not one, but two amazing guests. The first is CEO of Adthena, an AI, market-leading AI intelligence search platform specializing in empowering global brands, marketers, and agencies in maximizing not just visibility, but performance across paid search, AI, and LLMs. Welcome to Phillip Thune.
Thanks for having me back.
And the second guest is the CEO of Impersonally, a company whose mission it is to improve ad content, trustability, and trustworthiness. They detect and block impersonation, affiliate fraud, and ad abuse across search and other digital channels. Welcome to Shlomi Beer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I am very excited to have two people here who spend a lot of time thinking about search and making sure they're at the forefront of understanding about what's going on within that industry. We're going to talk about what the latest data shows from an AI search and AI overview perspective. And then we're going to talk about what that means from a brand protection perspective today, how brands should think about brand protection, and how AI is making that more complex and how sort of advertisers are dealing with more black box situations. So to start off with, I'd actually like to reference a study you did last time, Philip, the last time you were on the podcast. And that was a study that looked at 10 million SERPs. It was a study that looked at the prevalence of AI overviews across 5 different categories. So automotive, travel, finance, healthcare, and retail. And one of the really great charts, we'll get it up on screen, was the prevalence of AI overviews by search term across those 5 categories. And things like travel was relatively minimal. But if you look at finance and healthcare, it's incredibly prevalent. And then you have retail, it kind of steadily grew, and it was very prevalent at the sort of the 6, 7, 8, 9 search term length.
Right.
There was another chart I thought was really interesting, which we'll bring up, which was the brand, non-brand split. So obviously a level of prevalence across all categories from a non-brand perspective. But for brand, it was next to nothing apart from healthcare, which was then almost 40%. So really, really interesting data. You've since done another study, and you did that in 2 parts. You did 2 4-week periods looking at that data across the same 5 categories. Tell us a little bit more about why you did that study.
I think the key to understanding all the change that's going on is just having sort of baseline of what's happening. And Google's always kind of tested things and, they're always experimenting. But I think in this era when they have now real competition from ChatGPT and others, they are the level of experimentation and the level of change, maybe not day to day, but certainly we see changes week to week, definitely month to month, is kind of somewhat astonishing. So what we're trying to do is make sure we're watching, make sure we're helping our clients or just the kind of the community at large understand, how often our AIO is showing up. Yeah. Is it different between different industries? Is it different if there's a brand term in the search versus not in the search? So a lot of this is, it's hard to understand what's happening to your paid campaigns if you don't know what's going on. And AI overviews, because they're so prominent, because most of the time, and we've got some data about this too, most of the time they're above the paid search ads. We're starting to see more and more they're below the paid search ads. But when they're above the paid search ads, the clicks on your paid ads go down 20, 30, 40%. And so you can kind of be running a campaign and being like, oh, my brand campaigns are fine. I'm doing okay. And then all of a sudden, it drops and you're like, what happened? And I think in a lot of cases, it's going to be, oh, there's an AI overview there. And if people see the AI overview, they don't scroll down the page, they don't click on your ad.
Yep. And it makes sense that you would do those assessments as 2 different time periods because, like you say, it's moving so quickly.
Right.
And I imagine it's something you're probably going to be doing again this year and next year as things continue to evolve.
Yeah, I was here last time. We were sort of talking about kind of April, May 2025 numbers. The study we released recently was kind of a 4-week period across August and September. We just did some more things about just the brand part. We just looked at the last 4 weeks just because I knew I was going to be here and I wanted to be able to update that as well. So yeah, we're constantly watching. If you're a client of ours, then we're watching on the terms that you care about, but we're also kind of watching broadly and trying to publish that information just because there's so many questions and having a sense of what's going on is really important.
Yep. In this latest study, there were a few views that weren't included in the first study. Some of them were like at a very individual brand level, which we'll get to. Okay. But let's start off with what were the sort of main takeaways from this second study?
I'd say that the first one, which is not too surprising, is that there's more AI overviews, right? So it didn't matter which industry we were looking at, the prevalence of AI overviews is increasing. It's still the same trend, right? So what we talked about last time was the more words in a search term, the more you see an AI overview. Again, not surprising, but if it's a 1-word search or a 2-word search, they weren't that prevalent. When you start doing 8-word, 9 words, 10 words, even in travel and auto, you start to see a pretty good prevalence of AI overviews. What the second study showed is that across the board, that trend continues, but across the board, you're seeing AI overviews more often. And maybe a little bit surprising, you're starting to see them more in the shorter search terms, especially as you said, healthcare, finance, could be 30, 40% of the time, 3-word search term, you get an AI overview.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are, and I think every one of us experienced that by its own, right? We're using search much more conversational than it was, which basically means that instead of searching on shorter terms, as Phillip was saying, like 2, 3, 4 keywords, it's going like to 10 or even larger, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's full conversations. And that's where, search is really changing, right? We use it much more in different platforms on longer searches, right? It's not just cheap flights, right? Or cheap hotels.
Right.
Now you can like fully specify what you need, what your family needs, etc., right? Where you want it. And I think that's where Google and the other platforms are trying to jump in and see how they will change the scope for that, right? And then arrange the page, right? Including organic and paid. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing where we are seeing it's, if at some point there was a clear difference between what's organic and what's paid, I think Google, especially Google, it's merging that into one thing that it's combined. And figure that out, it's not easy because they're changing it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that we're moving to a world where, to your point, because we're searching more conversationally and the way we use these platforms, we're generally giving them more context about who we are as an individual, what we're looking for. We're getting to a place where it feels like we're not matching keywords, we're matching almost like entire brands, a brand's essence. And when I say brand essence, I kind of mean it from like a structured data point of view, because that's how it's doing this. It's like understanding all the content and structured data that relate to a brand and how that matches to a very complex search keyword, which is super interesting. I'd love to talk about one of the other charts. So I know if we haven't shown it already, there's the original chart, which is the search term length by category. There's then the comparison of that versus the first and second study. So you can see the relative differences. And like you said, it's essentially growing everywhere. But I think there's some really interesting differences across some parts. Healthcare in particular, I think there was a bit of a pullback in some areas, which is super interesting. I guess it kind of makes sense because healthcare was seeing the highest prevalence. But what was your takeaway from that sort of slight pullback there?
Yeah, so if the search terms started to get longer, we're seeing kind of the percentage of times that an AI overview shows up went down somewhat. I'll be honest, I don't know if we can make a conclusion. I think it's a function of Google testing constantly, trying to figure out, I think their ultimate goal, right, is does this make the user happy, right? So as long as people keep coming to Google and don't go to the other guys, Google will get their ad revenue. They'll make their money. So I think it is all about, what seems to keep the folks coming back and keep people on the page or get them to the right answer.
Yep.
It was interesting. Remember that in that study and just in general, even though search terms are getting longer and more conversational, it's still true that shorter terms, there's much more volume on shorter terms than there is on longer terms.
Yeah.
So I think you can get a little bit of noise that if it's a 8-word search term in healthcare, right, we don't have as much data on that as a 2-word or 3-word, just because there's not as many impressions. So, no, I think what I take away from it is that there's a lot of change, right? And it's not surprising that on the whole you're seeing more and more AI overviews, but also to me not so surprising that in certain pockets or in certain places you might be seeing less. We had I want to say it was kind of I think it was the September timeframe, August September timeframe. We noticed that finance, like credit, people searching for credit cards or loans or insurance, again, like from one week to the next, the prevalence of AI overviews just dropped. It went from kind of the terms we were looking at back then, we went from like 40 something percent to 20. And then like a few days later, it was 10. So it went down. So again, I think the point is it can go both ways. It's not just going up. It depends on, what it is. And it's a function of Google experimenting and trying to figure out what makes people happiest.
Yeah. And of course as well, especially on finance, because we monitor that as well, regulation a lot. When AI basically summarizes a lot of content in finance, the result sometimes is very, very complex in terms of compliance and regulation, because the sources they're picking up, right? So that's another layer, right? That in retail and maybe travel, it's a bit less complex, but definitely in finance, and we see that more fluctuation, definitely,
Yeah, I mean, and the same can be said for healthcare, just given the level of regulation.
Exactly, yeah. Healthcare will be, that one as well.
That's interesting. So you are seeing fluctuations, and you put that down to an evolving sort of regulatory landscape.
Yeah. We know that. I mean, basically, that part we know actually straight from Google. They have the product people that they work on that. They have hinted on those things, that they're much more cautious and on their finance summaries and AI overviews, right? Because of there is much more regulation there.
Yeah, makes sense. I want to talk about some of the figures in that difference chart, but to your point, the takeaway is there's a lot of change. I think the only thing I would also want to call out was just there was an interesting difference at the retail level. So I think with retail in the original study we talked about, and also this comparison, there's a change in the prevalence, an increase in the prevalence around the 6-7 word length mark. And I think it was double digit when she got into that range for retail. And I just thought that was particularly interesting because like finance and healthcare, maybe it's wrong for me to generalize, but there's a lot more discoverability in terms of the search terms and the complexity of the search terms and length. Within retail, it feels a little bit more, it's very bottom of funnel, commercial, I should say. So an increase in there is everyone's probably a little bit sensitive to. I'm hesitant to ask you if any takeaways from that again, because it's like it's all changing. But yeah, any takeaways from that?
Yeah, I think the for the shorter terms or the shorter queries, right? There tends to be, I think, kind of more intent. Best running shoes or things like that. I think once you start to get into a longer, more conversational thing, I think what's our takeaway is that Google's picking up on that, okay, you need more advice. So this is not perfect, but it does feel like in retail, the longer the query or the more conversational it is, probably the higher up in the funnel somebody is, right? They're still trying to figure it out. They're not quite at that buying decision yet. And so if you think again about Google's business model, if you do a retail related query, you're often going to get kind of shopping results. And so I guess Google, again, trying to meet the searcher where they want to be, is like, oh, okay, this is a much longer query. This person's still trying to figure it out. They're probably not, showing them a pair of running shoes with the price and the star rating. That's not where they're at yet. They're still trying to figure out what's important. What should I care about? What are the characteristics I need to know about? And then maybe later they'll kind of shorten it to say, oh, I want a particular, On running shoe or Nike running shoe. So yeah, that's our takeaways. Do we know for sure? Not exactly, but that makes sense to us that the more conversational it is, the more it makes sense even for retail, that Google's can say, okay, this is more about research. We should show an AI overview.
Yeah. Google actually on Thursday, they announced, right, 2 products for retail, right, on the AI mode. One that will enable comparing products, right, straight away in the AI mode. And then also like online fulfillment, right? So you can buy straight from Google. So
yeah, and that fulfillment thing or area of development is super fascinating, because that's obviously the route that some of the LLMs are going down as well. Is how do we have or create a platform where you do everything from discovery to purchase all in one place, and that's really interesting, because I don't think anyone's really pulled that off. I think a lot of platforms have had for aspiration.
ChatGPT, they announced it as well.
But in terms of like that, but actually getting to the place where people are comfortable doing all of that, I think is still.
I think that's a big question, right? Whether, I mean, you will allow your agent, right?
Yeah.
Your personal agent, do all the research. That's probably fine, right? But then fulfilling and making the actual buy decision, that's one of the big questions. Yes.
Yeah. And again, right, one theme here is change, but I think the other theme is maybe it's early days. Right, you keep seeing numbers that traffic from ChatGPT when it comes to kind of commerce and buying is a tiny fraction, right, compared to Google. Now, it's a quickly growing fraction, and that means that over time it's going to be more meaningful. But I think it's a little, the Atlas browser was now a few weeks old, right? So with the agent maybe being a little bit more integrated and hopefully easier to buy things. But you actually asked me this question last time I was here, and I was like, I think it's a little bit early to say, hey, an agent's going to do everything on my behalf, and I'm never going to go to a website again. We'll see. I mean, all we know is it's going to change, and it's kind of interesting to see these early experiments. But from a retail perspective, from people spending millions of dollars or pounds or euros on paid search, they're not seeing that much change. When there is an AI overview, big impacts, clicks in terms, where the shopping ads get shown or even the text ads get shown. But again, it's still a pretty small percentage.
Yeah, even an increase, right? Google just reported a 10% increase on the last quarter, right, on their search part.
Yeah.
So their search is not decreasing, right?
And paid ads, right? Yeah,
paid ad search, right?
No matter what happens, paid ads, the revenue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not talking about the YouTube side and the cloud, Google Cloud, right? No, on their search, they reported 10% increase on their, especially on search. I think they mentioned.
Yep.
So that's still growing. Part on CPC's increase, right? Of course, but also part, I think that the basis. I think one of the changes you were talking previously, right? So we know that much more AI overviews basically means more content straight away to the user, which means they don't click in the websites, and then CTRs goes down, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, that opens up more options for putting ads in more queries, right? Yep. Because a lot of more searches that they were not there because people were not used to search in that way, right? So now they're open for like more ads, more advertisers there. So I think that's one of the trends that we'll be seeing, right? On one hand, and again, that all the publishers are really mad about this, right? Because I mean, all these platforms are summarizing the information, right, and preventing people to go to their websites, right? So that will go down, CTRs go down, but the basis of what can be monetized, I think we'll see it growing.
Yeah, it's the $1 million question. How do you monetize conversational search? Because to your point, where we're seeing the AI overview prevalence the most is on these very long queries. They probably didn't see ads before anyway because they didn't convert very well. They dragged down a campaign if they were part of a campaign.
And they were smaller in volume.
Smaller in
general,
volume, yeah.
Right.
And so now we're in a place where these AI overviews are maybe changing collapsing the funnel, I think is the word that we probably get to when we start talking about this stuff.
Right.
Collapsing the funnel at that level to be able to take someone from discovery, long tail search to somewhat through the funnel to the point where a paid ad can convert at an acceptable rate. That seems to be the $1 million question. I think one other thing in the study that I thought was really interesting is this brand non-brand split. So the first study we looked at, again, we'll try and get up on screen. Non-brand, obviously prevalence across the 5 categories, but from a brand perspective, very little, largely, apart from healthcare, nearly 40%. The latest study shows something pretty different. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and I think that's the second major thing that showed up. I don't know that I'd say it did surprise us a little bit because it was kind of surprising last time that automotive or travel, like literally 0% of brand searches showed an AI overview. And now pretty much every category is at least kind of 17, 18, 19% of the time. If this is a query where a brand name is in there, either just the brand or the brand plus some other words in there, it's getting close to 20% across the board. And that's a major change. And I think that's impacting some of the overall results. So when we show you that overall, for example, financial services, I think it was 9.9% more AI overviews for that set. Some of the reason that's up the way it is because brand searches have gone from 0 to close to 20%. So that was really interesting. I know we're going to talk more about protecting your brand, but I think again that makes it trickier, right? Just a few months ago, if you could be pretty comfortable that on your brand campaigns you didn't have to worry about AI overviews. Now you do, and that's yet another challenge in terms of sort of making sure that your brand is showing up on search the way you want it to.
Go ahead.
I mean, is there on that study any difference between the different types of query, like if there are more research queries or
I think. It's a good question, and I think it's a good thing for us
follow up.
It's good follow up. You'll have me back a third time, maybe. No, but I think at that level, it means that it's showing up kind of across the board. But it's a good question to
more
dig
transactional or exactly.
Yeah.
Will be interesting to see.
I had the same question because otherwise, what does an AI overview provide in that situation? Because it's very clear the intent. Like, it couldn't be any clearer, really. You're looking for a particular brand. What does an AI overview provide in that situation if it is a pure brand term?
Yeah, well, remember, sometimes it's just the brand. You just type in Nike. Sometimes Nike running shoes or particular Nike running shoe,
or Nike versus Adidas, right? So that will be a comparison more, which is a brand as well, right?
Yeah, and as Shlomi said, that's certainly more what we see, right? That's very likely to bring up an AI overview when you start trying to do comparisons between brands
or top shoes or top running shoes, whatever. Yeah,
got it. That makes sense. Okay. I'm trying to think of the other really interesting charts in that study. I think the other one was you did this time, but not last time, was like the brand level. So I think you pulled out 20, 30 brands, didn't name them,
right?
But just showed the data and the fact that it was different across all. And I think all of them had seen an increase in AI overviews, bar a few.
Right.
But just given the fact that there were so many differences across brands, what do you take from that? And would you have any theories as to why it was so different across different brands?
I still think it's a function of Google reacting to what they're seeing, right? And so and that's why it's, I think, so important to kind of track what's going on. That a big point of showing that is to kind of explain, hey, look, you can't. There's no general rule, right? You can't just say, oh, okay, here's the trend, and that's going to impact every brand the same way, or every category the same way, or every type of search, the same way. We really wanted to kind of point that out, that brand by brand, you can see very big differences. You're right. Again, the general trend is for almost every brand, more AI overviews are showing up on the search terms that they care about. But I think we had one that was actually negative. One had gone down, and a couple that really didn't move very much. That was the point of that, which is we're trying to get this data out there. We think it's important. But the trend, just because you see a trend doesn't necessarily mean it's going to apply to your specific brand.
Got it. Yeah. And that comes back to the categories as well. Like the fact that it's so different at that level. Were there any other call outs or charts that you thought were particularly interesting in that study?
No, I think we covered it. And again, going back to the overall theme, just change, right? Yeah. We were taking two different 4-week periods. But again, like, we're watching this every day, and our clients are watching it every day. And again, it doesn't just go in one direction. It goes up and down. We're not totally sure why. We can have some theories, things that make logical sense. And if the trend continues, then that kind of cements, then you're probably right. But no, I think the overall point of that is we know we're in a dynamic space, but to understand exactly how dynamic, I think is pretty helpful.
Yeah. Having that visibility is super important. Yeah. And then what do you advise? How do you help brands and use that data to take action?
I think and we talked about this a little bit last time. I think the key is if you can understand what's going on, you've got to be pretty agile, because like I said, it can go in both directions. And so we're going to have more data on this coming soon, but starting to estimate, search term by search term, kind of the click loss or the click-through rate loss when there's an AI overview. And then again, is it above your ad or is it below your ad? Like I said, the early kind of data is that it could be 20, 30, 40% decline. And so knowing which kind of categories or which search terms are being impacted the most by AI overviews, we think kind of leads to the action of, all right, constantly kind of understanding what's happening, being able to move budget around. We don't have estimates on this yet. I think we will probably in the next month or two. But one conclusion you might have is, if an AI overview appears on the search term or this category of search terms, that means I'm going to get less clicks. Do I need to start bidding more? Because I know those clicks are some of my, let's say some of those clicks are most valuable, or some of those are my most high converting search terms. So we're going to have better estimates on that soon. But that's one thing you might take away from it. We've seen other clients whose takeaway is I've lost the battle, right? If an AI overview is there, probably not going to get the click. I'm just going to shift and stay focused on the terms where it's not appearing.
Yep.
And again, longer term, maybe if it's just so fascinating, right? Google has to keep making money, and every quarter they, like Shlomi said, they seem to grow 10%, 12%. Their Google, there's paid ads, so the ads are getting in there, and they're still spending, your client's budget. But yeah, kind of how it's doing and making sure that the conversions are there, and just being super aware, knowing which terms are the terms that are really important to you, or maybe the terms that aren't so important to you. Again, going back to retail, it does feel like it's really not impacting retail advertisers that much yet. Again, 2 months from now, 4 months from now.
Part for that is because shopping ads are on top of AI overviews, of course.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we're going to have this podcast every 2 months with the latest data. It changes that much. Okay, great. Yeah, loads of really interesting data, and I think that's really useful for advertisers just to get a sense of like where the change is happening at what level, every level. Let's pivot to brand protection then. So we've obviously talked about how AI overviews and the changing search and AI landscape is evolving. Ad protection in all its forms feels like it's getting harder. Before we get into the AI impact, Shlomi, just recap on kind of the 2 or 3 main, I guess, ad abuse types that you see.
Yeah. So yeah, there are also a few trends on the brand protection, right? As the funnel changes, that we are seeing, and again, we are coming from an angle, ads or in general content, right? It's a very powerful tool, right? That bad actors can influence, right? And change how users or see the world, right? And if at the beginning we started, right, seeing those ads that pretend to be, let's say, a certain brand, and what they were doing was trying to monetize those ads, basically by taking that organic traffic from the brand and monetizing it through an affiliate program.
Yep.
Now we are seeing all sorts of different manipulations, right, than with ads, right? So it's kind of a new attack vector. If you think about this, everyone gets a lot of phishing emails, right, on their inboxes every day, right? They, of course, they're getting better, right? And being more realistic, as also AI, it's getting better, right? Like having threads of previous conversations, catching more context of you, it's very, I'm sure everyone gets those, right? I get those a lot. And the same of ads. Ads, it's kind of, it's a bit more overlooked, right? People, there are less solutions for ads, but again, they're very powerful tools for these bad actors to just be in front of users, right? Paying, you're in front of users. I mean, because of all the ecosystem of the ads, right? You can even target them very well, or extremely well, right? And then exploit different things, right? So we tackle this in different forms. So we differentiate between different types of fraud. So one of them is the impersonation. Impersonation, basically, what we call it, it's pretending to be someone else, right? If you present yourself as a brand, and you're not the brand, then you are impersonating them. Then there is a different bunch of things that you can do, right? Or basically the fraudsters do on that impersonation. With them being, some of them are still kind of trying to steal money from the brand itself, right? Either by running affiliate fraud, or there are other schemes as well that are trying to circumvent internal bidding on the platforms itself. We see this a lot in marketplaces where different merchants, they need to bid inside the marketplace, right, for a position. And instead of doing that, they impersonate the marketplace in Google, for example, and then send users straight to their listing page, right? So yeah, we have seen that a lot in retail, a lot in travel, or in general marketplace. Yeah. And then you have phishing of different types. It can be phishing through trying to put a fake phone number in the ad. We see it a lot in different industries, especially around searches which relate to customer support or find phone number of an airline or a bank, right? And then the ad will basically display a fake phone number that if the user just dials that number, yeah, they will get defrauded. By the way, we did have a few videos calling those numbers and seeing what type of fraud they tried to do.
Oh wow!
We can put a link if you want.
Yeah.
So part of that's those conversations with those fraudsters. Yeah, then there is a lot of social engineering then for trying to steal your credit card account or your account to different parts. We see a lot of phishing using fake websites as well that today are very easy to generate. So companies will impersonate big brands like Microsoft, and then you will land on a page that looks exactly like Microsoft, but it's not, right? And then you can get defrauded either your account, or if you're trying to buy something, then depends on the industry. And today now, I mean, a lot also in chatbots. A lot of the ads then basically today they have a mode to send you to conversational modes in messaging platforms. And again, that as well, seeing a lot of those frauds. So it's very diverse, change all the time.
Yeah, that's it's so interesting. It's such a fascinating area because I think most people are probably somewhat familiar with the first one you talked about, which is essentially like affiliate fraud. Affiliate's been around for a long time. But I think most people generally have an awareness of that. But the other things you talked about, I think, are less known about, like the phishing scams. I mean, we were talking before we came on air about how we've all kind of experienced one of those. The one I remember doing the rounds was if you search for Google Ads Editor, there would be an ad for Google Ads Editor, and you download it, and it would be, a phishing scam again.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the issue with that is, at least with an affiliate program, you had to sign up to a network, and so there was a few more eyes on that in terms of like seeing that fraud. But with these other forms of abuse, like they feel like they're much easier to go under the radar. Do you find that to be the case?
Well, I mean, the platforms like Google, Bing, and social platforms, they're doing a lot, right? But of course, the fraudsters are very creative. By the way, on that, I mean, on that scam that you mentioned about Google Ads that we published earlier this year, I mean, that was huge. So the interesting thing was that I mean, you were typing Google account, right? Your Google Ads, right, in Google. And then the first ad was an ad for your Google Ads, but it was fake, right?
Yeah.
So people will go there, add their credentials, right, and get their account stolen. Now, fraudsters, they use that access to their accounts of legit businesses, right, to run this campaign again and again and get more and more accounts, right? So it was an exponential kind of thing. So let's say you steal the account of a grocery store, right, that advertises locally, whatever, on Google Ads, and then they use that account to run another campaign. Right. And then that became exponential because that account, stolen account, infected like 5 accounts, and those 5 accounts, another 5 accounts. Mm-hmm. So we saw that like growing massively over like a month in January. They exploited another thing. They were creating also fake websites on the Google directory. So all those fake websites, they had like a Google URL. So that sounded like really legit, right?
Yeah.
And that what permitted it to be like such large thing, right? Mm-hmm.
Our theme here is be aware of what's happening, and the fact that Google themselves, right, are sort of victims of kind of ad fraud. You know, if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. So, and I think the other thing, Shlomi, working with Shlomi has been interesting in that the AI just makes our lives easier, and we're seeing it in all different ways. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it makes the bad guys' lives easier, right? It's super easy to create a website that looks exactly like Google or Microsoft or whatever. So, I think the and Shlomi, you know this better than me. The Google put in place a while ago the ability to kind of see the origin of the ad, right? So they have anybody who advertises on Google has to list like who they are and that. You got to click once again, but I think it's made it a little bit easier, at least from our perspective, I'm sure from your perspective, to show our clients or to show prospects like, hey, this is happening, and let me show you, there's a company in China that is advertising on your terms. Obviously, nothing good can come of that because it's your brand and they don't care about your brand, right? So it's been interesting to learn more about it. One thing we probably should have mentioned earlier on is that Adthena and Impersonally are working together. We think Impersonally's got this fantastic ability to find, all this fraud. We've done things throughout the years to help our clients kind of figure out what's going on, including when maybe somebody's infringing their trademark and help them take that down. But we're going to integrate Impersonally's tools, or we have already, into Adthena. So you can get kind of all the things you get from Adthena, plus the power of the things that Shlomi's team has built.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You're both all over search. Right. So bringing together those two slightly different perspectives or angles of coming at it makes a lot of sense. Yep. I think one thing that I find really interesting is the level of trust we're putting into these different AI reviews and systems, because that is partly what's fueling this. Is we trust what we're seeing in those summaries. And Impersonally did a really good blog post earlier this year on the kind of change, and this is more from an organic perspective, I think, but the change in how ranking is going from authority to more relevance, and the issues that's causing, and I guess as well, like the speed of ranking within organic is changing. So basically, it's easier now for bad actors to create a piece of content that's structured in the right way, that then goes into an AI overview or ranks organically much faster than the traditional way of doing organic. Could you talk a little bit more about that post?
Yeah. I mean, it's about influencing content, right? If on ads, I mean, it's basically paying, right? On organic, it's about poisoning the sources of the LLMs, right? Or the listings, etc., right? So SEO poisoning is something that has existed for a long time, and fraudsters have tried to increase in traditional SEO, right, their position over the organic searches, right, in trying to promote things. But it's a hard job, right? It used to take a long time. At the beginning, was I'm talking about 2010, right? It was easier for them to do that, right? But as the Google algorithm became more complex, and everyone, it's trying to work about SEO and create authority, it has become more complex. That's where the ad fraud boomed, right? Because then just pay a little bit and that's it. But now I think we are on the LLM side, right? On the AI overviews, I think we are back to square one, right? And the fact that it's all new, right? All these fraudsters, they're trying to create massive networks of content to influence the LLMs, right? And the results that get published there. And that's a challenge, right? How you find that, how you, as you said, what's trustworthy, right? What's real, right? What you can trust. And I think that's an important part, that there is no answer yet to that, right?
Yeah.
And but in general, in the internet, it's harder to decide what you can trust, right? That's what we try to give a bit more certainty to our clients, right? What are the real things, what not, right? How to protect your part, right? But in general, it's a question that we'll see that evolving very soon, I think.
Right. Well, I guess there's some good news, right? At least on the ad side, if you're paying attention, if you're watching, if you have the right tools, you can get those things taken down pretty quickly. I think we just announced that I think we're the first company where Google's kind of blessed our what we call auto takedown, right? Where we'll take if we see an infringing trademark, we can submit that very quickly on behalf of our clients to Google, and Google will take it down very quickly. So, yeah, if you're seeing this, I think our point is, you want to act, and you can change it. And it's not just about stopping fraud. That's obviously pretty important. But especially if the ads are around your brand, the bad guys are showing ads around your brand. If you take them down, you also, just improve your efficiency.
Yeah.
Right. It's like annoying that not only are the bad guys trying to do this stuff, but they're also increasing your cost per click because more competition on your brand terms means you have to pay more for your own clicks. So I think we're getting a little dark here, and it is a little dark. Yeah. But if you're doing the right things and you're watching, Google will take this stuff down pretty quickly. You just have to let them know.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. Yeah. We have seen, we have a lot of examples of, companies that work with us, like their CPCs being decreased by removing the bad actors and reporting and doing all that. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it's not that also works not only on fraud things, right? But also we see a lot of misinformation. That's kind of also new, especially around trends. And let's say war areas for Ukraine, like you will see a lot of book with us and we will donate, for example, kind of ads to this cause or that cause, right? Yeah. And next to like the legit brands, right? Some of them they're pure scams, some of them they're affiliate schemes. Mm-hmm. But again, at the core, they're like social engineering, trying to deceive users.
Yeah. I wonder if we try and extrapolate out from where we are based on some of these trends, how you'd think about. So let's say we take ads in LLMs. So right now there are some limited ways to do paid within LLMs, but it looks more like an affiliate model. It's with select partners. Could you extrapolate out the ways LLMs rank or answer questions based on relevance versus authority? Could you extrapolate that out to the ad product they eventually come with? And the reason I ask that is because if you could extrapolate that out, that means you maybe have the same problem with the organic that you do with the paid side, in that you've got this issue where I guess there's a way for a bad actor to get into that space in a different, maybe not easier, but in a different way that they can with like traditional Google advertising, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I think that one question that is whether there is always one answer, right, to a broad question, right? Their user preferences, right, and their personalization, right? So I think, I mean, it's hard to know where all the ads and LLMs will go. We know that Google announced, and we have also seen cases like we've seen shopping ads in AI overviews already, and that will probably just grow. I mean, they announced it also outside the US, I think a few weeks back, and I think we'll see that grow. Also in kind of a broader scope, right? In previously, and like how on a receipt, for example, you wouldn't see any ad, right? And now you will see recommendations for the ingredients and different kind of things, right? So that's the increased space that we were talking about as well, right? On the influence on that, for the organic, I think on that probably what we have learned is that the same principles, right, of expertise, experience, authority, and trust, right, are the ones that basically are the ones leading the organic results on LLMs.
Yeah. So it goes back to those kind of somewhat fundamentals of organic, but it feels like there's going to be a calibration of the authority part of that to make sure that. Because I guess it's a balance. Like the advantage of the LLMs and AI mode is that they're able to surface content that is very topical, very relevant, because they aren't relying so much on authority. So it's kind of like that speed versus sort of authority trade-off, which is going to be interesting to see. I'd love to just pivot to, as we extrapolate this out, we were talking just before we came on about how you are starting to see some ads in different places across like AI mode. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing there and kind of thoughts initially on that data.
Yeah, it's not a surprise, right? Google, I think going back to their marketing conference earlier this year, they said, "Hey, ads inside of AI overviews are coming. We've been waiting and waiting, and this is not the best way to do it, but even individually, we'll go to Google and sort of type things in. Even typing things in, they used as an example. I think one of their examples was, if you did a search for what are the rules around taking a dog on a plane, that inside that AI overview reply would be an ad for a dog carrier, right? Makes sense. So even when you do that search, you don't get ads for dog carriers inside the AI overview. At least I haven't. But yeah, very, very recently, our clients are starting to talk about seeing ads, not just the shopping ads, but actually seeing other ads inside the AI overviews. So again, not a surprise. Google told it was coming. We've been waiting for it. Feels like it's just starting to come. Because we're watching so carefully, Shlomi is too, we'll be able to kind of report on that as it happens. I think it's still like 0 point something %, right? Google's doing the very early testing. But yeah, I think there's going to be some big questions that paid search folks have around that. One is, okay, how often is there an AI overview? All right, and now how often is there an AI overview with an ad in it? If there is an ad in it, is it my ad? Is it my competitor's ad? If there's an ad in it, what does it start to do to the other ads on the page? So those are all questions we've anticipated. We're already working now trying to figure out how to answer those and how to present those. I think people know this, but you can't say to Google, "Hey, I want to be the ad in the AI overview," right? The only way you can get in there is if you're using PMax or AI Max or Broad Match. So Google's deciding, one, should there be an ad there? And two, which ad should it be? And as far as I can tell, they're not going to report, or at least not anytime soon, on how many of your ads were in an AI review versus outside of them. So again, going back to like, what's step one in terms of figuring out what to do with your campaigns and how it's impacting is just know what's happening. So yeah, I don't know. I'm again, keep giving you reasons to have me back. But I think that will be really interesting, right? So it's just too early, right? We know it's coming. We're starting to see it. We've got ways to track it. We'll kind of report that as we find it. But what is the impact on kind of campaigns in general, or what is the impact on particular kinds of ads? Still too early to say. But there's no doubt it will have an impact, right? So you kind of want to be watching.
Do you guys think the other platforms will do ads as well?
Well, so yeah, we Matt and I talked about that last time. So I feel like every time ChatGPT or OpenAI sort of gives you a sense that it's coming, then somebody else there, including Sam Altman, kind of says, "Well, maybe not." So what was it? The latest is, right, I think he said on a podcast that he views Google ads as kind of a failure, which I think is completely unfair. But his point is like, look, if the only way you can get the best result is to have somebody advertise, then maybe the organic search results aren't doing a good enough job. I'm not sure where that logic comes from, but I think what you can take from that is we still believe ChatGPT will have ads. They will not look a lot like Google ads, right? Because that's their bias. I think the other interesting thing that's kind of some interesting news, right, is Perplexity launched, I think it was pretty much a year ago, launched like sponsored follow-up prompts, right? So you do a prompt, you get an answer, and then you get maybe 5 suggested follow-up prompts. One of them might be sponsored. We had clients who were like, we wanted to try it. We called Perplexity. They didn't return our phone calls. We heard that the person in charge of the ad program has left Perplexity. The CEO of Perplexity has said out loud,
we couldn't find many of them as well.
That he doesn't like ads. So they were only showing up if you were an unpaid, right? If you were a subscriber, you didn't get ads, or you didn't get sponsored follow-up prompts. So I think for Perplexity, probably not going to see much on the ad side. ChatGPT, they almost have to, right? They're just losing so much money. They've got to kind of figure out other ways to generate revenue. So interesting to know that it's probably not going to look very much like Google does search ads. But how exactly the form factor is, it's just guessing right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your prediction on probably. I've one question for both of you actually. So collapsing the funnel, AI reviews, putting ads in there. For me, is a question over how far you can take ads in that experience, because if you are dealing with very upper funnel queries that aren't immediately commercial in nature, I guess the logic is an AI review can take people through that journey. Do you think that will turn into a material ad placement within Google, or do you think there's a chance that it might actually separate it off from like the normal way they look at performance? Because I guess one issue we have is that if ads going in there, they might not convert as well, but it's still potentially an important piece of inventory. So I guess the question that I reframe it is, do you think that will grow into like a meaningful area in terms of ads, or do you think it'll be split off in some way?
Meaning that if you want an ad inside an AI overview, it'll be a different campaign type?
Yeah.
I think there's a chance of that. To use the example that Google themselves use, right? The dog carrier thing. Mm-hmm. When you search for dog carrier, you're looking to buy a dog carrier, right? So I think not only are as an advertiser, is that a higher quality visitor to your site if they click on your ad, right? They're more likely to buy. I think when somebody says, well, what are the rules around having a dog on a plane? And they're presented with a dog carrier ad, they might go, oh, okay. Yeah. And they might click on it, and they might sort of just, again, they're in that awareness phase. They're sort of higher up in the funnel. So they're just seeing like, oh, the dog carriers come in the size I need? But they're not ready to buy. So, yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting. I think there is a chance. I think we're all biased here, right? But we think paid search is like the best form of ads ever created, right? You're getting in front of people at the exact time they're saying they want something, and you start putting ads in AI overviews, especially if they're informational or not commercial in any way. You show an ad, you're definitely going to get some people clicking, and because they're not in that buying mindset, the conversion rates could be lower. And so, how does Google deal with that? Do they sort of behind the scenes, do they kind of lower the price per click for that or not charge you as much? Right, you've got the Google Display Network, which again, are going off. But our advice is to probably not use that. But yeah, Google already has other forms of advertising that they charge far lower CPCs for, because they just know they don't convert as well. But I think that's a great question, and that's going to be interesting to see how that develops over time.
Shlomi, thoughts?
Yeah, I see two trends about that. Right, one is that I think Google is removing their ad types, right? They want you to do PMAX, right? I mean, that's just throw a bunch of assets and they will do everything for you, right? So, and I think that's what they will try to do more and more. They tried many years ago with DSA, which wasn't amazing, right? But or didn't succeed to take a lot of the budgets at the end. But I think PMAX will be more successful, right? In blending all the organic and paid within that real estate of the search will be more fuzzy, right? It will be harder for the users to control. And I think that's the other part. From that probably will come a lot of opportunities as well, right? Because advertisers they were like very used to control keywords, control budgets, right? With all the AI, you get less control, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes also less visibility, right? As Phil was saying, right? Today there's zero visibility on ads on AI overviews, and well, not sure what will come, right? But I mean, how AI will create your ads probably at some point, right? Where they will put it, right? How at the end you can look at the ROI and be fine, right? But I think advertisers will want some kind of control and in levers to play with, right? So
yeah.
So I do think that's where at least Google is trying to go, right? And so we'll see more fuzzy the landscape.
It's I think we said it at the start or maybe before, but it's an incredibly exciting time in the industry. And whilst it can be a little bit frustrating with the level of change, and I feel like you're not always on top of it, it is a really interesting time right now. Everything's moving so fast. It's great to be able to sit here and think about how we help brands navigate these changes. First and foremost, it's having the visibility, knowing what's going on, but then it's also having the tools to be able to make sure that you can trust the ad content that's out there. This has been great. Loads of great conversation, great data. Thank you both for coming on. Before we end, I know for Adthena website, lots of great stories on there. The stories we talked about, they can be found on there. Any other resources you'd call out?
Yeah, if you go to Adthena, just go to our blog section. Not only can you see the latest study, but you can go back a little bit and see the study we did before. And so the newest study does talk about the changes, but probably interesting to go back and read the first study just to get a feel for how quickly it is changing.
Awesome. Yeah. And then for Impersonally, I referenced that blog post earlier this year. I think that's a really good blog post to check out. I know actually there's a couple of free tools on the website, so you can go in and check.
You can in our website, basically you can put your domain, and basically in 30 seconds we can give you a first estimate, right, on who is impersonating your ads, right? So you will get a quite accurate in like 30 seconds check, and then further on, right, you can get like a more complete audit on the email. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.